Welcome to the Redcaps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. Today, we welcome back Eric from the Merry Mushmen to talk all about their amazing new monster book based on Folklore, a game that they're publishing, and of course, some hints on when you'll see the next Knock magazine. Remember, no mortal can outrun a Redcap, so I hope you can sit back, listen, and enjoy. Bienvenue! Eric from the Merry Mushmen is back on the Redcaps Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Très bien, merci. If you want to speak French, we can speak French, but I might win.
You will definitely win. My son might be able to keep up with you. He speaks French much better than I can. I have barely enough passing that I can go to Quebec here in Canada and order some food and survive for a slight time, but other than that, not much else.
It's like most people in the world, you know.
How has things been? It's been a while since we chatted.
Yeah, things have been great. Really, there's been a lot of work happening in the Mushman house. We've been doing new things. We're late on the old things.
Well, let's talk about one of the new things that I'm quite happy about. We'll get to for those who don't know Eric or the Merry Mushmen by name, you probably know them by their most famous work, which is a Knock magazine, and we will get to Knock in the future of Knock later on. But the new item that's coming out, I've seen pictures, so I know the physical books have arrived, and I know a couple people have gotten them. He's holding it up on camera; you can't see, but it's the Bestiary, a folklore bestiary inspired by folk tales and superstitions. I'm super excited to get this because I love monster books. You can, if you want a way to make money off of me, just publish a monster book. I will probably buy it a sight unseen. The artwork on this one looks really awesome. Letty Wilson, she looks like she has knocked it out of the park on everything I've looked at through here. I can't wait to see it in physical form, but as I've gone through the PDF, it looks fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit about what made you guys decide to do a bestiary?
So if you've read, I know you have read, not but if your listeners have, there's in the first, or in 2 and 3, I believe, we have monsters that are not in the same format as the others, and that's because they're from Folklore, and there are 2 that Olivier wrote from his Basque mountains. There were stories that he was told by his grandmother when he was a kid. But Bad Patchy, the blacksmith who was kicked out of hell because he was so mean to the devils who tried to bring him to hell while he was alive. And the Tartaro are both in those issues, and we just decided to expand on the idea. It's always a bit frustrating to me, and I guess to Olivier as well, when you open a monster book and you have a monster with like great art, and all you have to use the monster on the page facing the great art is some stats and maybe a little bit of a description. So we wanted to give more. One of the reasons was that we wanted to give more to make a monster, if possible, the source of one or more adventures, and not just like that thing you're going to hack and slash in a room. But also try and bring back to D&D the stuff that D&D seems to have missed in its history. It's plundered everything from mythology to science fiction and fantasy and all the books you can think of, but somehow it sidestepped the folklore, like the stories especially we in Europe, I guess, are raised with. The eat your soup if you don't want so and so to eat you while you're asleep. Those stories that are probably not in as many books as as the mythology monsters and creatures from the Bible, but that should also be in our games, because what are our games if they're not about telling stories to each other?
Yeah, what I really like, so when I look at a monster book, for ages, the Tome of Monstrosities from Swords and Wizardry has always been one of my favorites, because it really goes in depth on the monsters and shows some adventure hooks. And that's what I really like about this one as well, is that each monster gets about 2 to 3 pages, sometimes more, in the book. There's some great art. There's description. There's the bog standard stat blocks, which are what they are, but the meat is that story. It's almost to the point where you could sit down when I'm going through it with my son. He loves monster books as well. And you can almost read out the folklore story as if it was a story right out of the book, to go along with the nice art and everything else that's there. And there's hooks for people to drop it into their game. It's really, really well done that way. When you look through them, I know you've got a couple entries in. Olivier has a couple entries in. You have other contributors. If excluding the 3 that you have in there, which is your favorite entry in it?
That is a tough one. It's a good thing that I brought the books with me. There's a lot of really interesting ones. I think I'm going to go with one of James Holloway's monsters, because he manages to make them monsters, but also they can be friends.
Okay.
The people of the Holy City, for example, are really interesting. They're taken from some more like an urban legend than a folklore creature, because it's American and less folklore over there. Especially, well, there is folklore, but it's native, and we didn't have any native persons on the team. Get in touch if you want to write native monsters and you're from one of the First Nations. I'm interested. So they are these villagers, these townspeople that look at you when you're on a lonely road in the woods. And if you follow them, you might find the Holy City, which is a abandoned boomtown that some cult leader started for the glory of God, and it didn't work because somehow people have turned onto each other, or maybe the cannibals, we're not sure. There's also an old bridge that you can go and carve a name on if you want that person to die and probably be eaten by the people of the Holy City. So there's like so many approaches. You can fit that in your campaign easily, as long as there's a wood and cultists, which is probably every campaign in the world. But yeah, they can be the scary thing that's going to take someone, abduct someone that you want to free, or unlikely allies.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's one among many.
It's the sort of stuff in here that, like you said, you don't hear in other books. It's not so much the creature itself. It's that backstory. It's the creative juice that comes with it when you read that. Like just the statement there you said is, you carve a name into a bridge and then the cultists will go and take care of the problem for you. There's so many ways you can play off that. My favorite, I think, at least through my first reading, is the Tartaro. Am I pronouncing that right? Actually, that's a good point too. Thank you guys so much for putting the pronunciations in the book. There are so many of these names that I'm sure I would just completely goof. But the Tartaros I thought were really cool. They're creatures that have Roman numerals for names, and just I don't know, the story that was told in there was just a fantastic little little tale, and I got to find a way to get them in because I don't know. I just really like the way that story was told.
Well, do you have mountains and sheep in your campaign?
Replace a giant with these guys, right? And you've got your story.
That's one of the two that was published in Knock before, but that we decided to expand on for this book.
Exactly. You're releasing this one in both OSE and in 5e. I haven't seen the 5e one. Is it essentially the exact same though? I know the cover is different, but is everything else inside the book mostly the same?
It's mostly the same. Some of the add-ons, the gameable material, as we call it, is different because of rules. Like I'm thinking of there's a race as class for OSE that becomes a racial origin for 5e. It's mostly the same. Like the layout was done at the same time, which turned into a whole bag of problems in the end, and we might not be do it the same way next time. And yeah, there might be a couple of paragraphs that might have been cut from a couple of entries, but not much really.
Did you find I'm guessing just because of the difference in how stat blocks and stuff work, is the page count a bunch bigger in the 5e book versus the OSE book? Or are they very similar?
That was our problem. Our page count was a hard limit that we couldn't go through because of weight, and weight because of shipping. And if you want to take advantage of the really great cultural product shipping rate that we get in France, we just couldn't go over 500 grams, which meant it was 160 pages. And in the end, we had to cut a couple of monsters that we will finish and put in PDF at some point, because we did promise 40 monsters in the Kickstarter, and it feels a bit bad. It takes a lot more space because stat blocks, and every ability has to have its own rules, and some of the wording that's the same from one monster to the other. If the ability is the same, the wording is the same, but you cannot, because it's 5e, you won't have all the information on the same page. You don't want to have people look for another monster in the book that you might not have. So it makes for I can show you, the listeners won't be able to hear, but what about maybe the people of the Holy City I was talking about? It's actually not a good example. What about the big monsters? We have some epic level monsters. That would be the stat block of the Serpent of Isabi, which is one of mine.
Right.
So it's mostly the whole spread. It's like 3 columns out of 4. Because there's legendary actions and rare actions and all the good stuff that you enjoy when you're playing 5e.
So it's pretty obvious why somebody would release a product under 5e, being the most popular game, reaching the widest audience there. So completely understand that. For OSE, when you're looking at the OSR or the older school games, OSE I think is also a clear choice. But I was just wondering, is there a specific reason that you chose OSE over, say, a generic OSR label or one of the other BX type clones? Is there an advantage from a marketing perspective, do you think, with the OSE label as opposed to OSR as a generic label?
There probably is a little bit of a marketing edge that you get there, but that's a choice we made for Knock. We haven't asked every contributor of Knock to convert everything that they wrote in a blog post years ago into OSE, but everything that's been written, especially for the book, or every monster has been converted to OSE because it's kind of the lingua franca of the OSR now. BX used to be. Remember the G plus days, the good old G plus days. We used to stat stuff. I know I at least used to stat stuff up for BX because we assume that everyone knows it, and it's so close to everything else that it's going to be accessible for everyone. So we just decided to actually have the little logo and follow Gavin's license. Obviously, I can't tell you if it's bringing us a lot more extra sales, but at least we got a little bit of a boost from Gavin putting a link to the Kickstarter in his newsletter. So that's probably some sales there.
Yeah, Gavin's license is really easy to get into as well. There isn't a whole lot behind it for the OSE support, logo and stuff on there. It's pretty straightforward. The only thing it seems like he asks is send me a copy because I'd like to be able to read one myself. So, but yeah, you're right. BX is kind of in many ways the tablet that everybody can translate off of, and unless you're heavy into some of Gavin's OSE advanced stuff, OSE is just BX, so it's pretty easy for everybody to translate from there to any other system that they would like to play with. When you open up the Bestiary and you're looking through it, you guys at the very beginning of the book, of course, have your table of contents, and I like the fact that you've kind of got it in two different formats. Right at the very beginning, you've got it in alphabetical format, and then you have it again in hit die format. But which then made me think, what is the format or what is the ordering for what they actually are in the book? If just by page count, is there a specific ordering there? Was it based off of the order they received in, or just how you fit them in, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's how Olivier was able to fit things in together. As I said, we kind of worked like in parallel, and not all the texts were done when the Kickstarter was launched, which isn't ideal, but we had a date and we needed to get to start when we like in the summer, as planned. So yeah, there's been a lot of juggling to make sure that everything can end up, and some monsters are just 2 pages, like a couple of them are just 2 pages, and that's just because we didn't have enough space. We will work differently for the next volume.
That actually brings me right to the next question. Is on the very front cover of the book, it says Volume 1 at the bottom. Does that mean we will be receiving more? Like this, you guys have like a back catalog of monsters that you wanted to bring in that you couldn't?
Well, we have the 2 that we cut. But,
from the 5e version.
Are not entirely edited, but we have the art for them. It was a late edition, Volume 1. I'm not even sure that we decided that when we started the KS campaign. But as the plan is to work on the Bestiary Volume 2 as we work on Knock, meaning overtime. So people send us monsters, and we edit them, lay them out, ask Letty for some of her lovely art. And when we have enough monsters and we're filling 160 pages, then we start marketing and put some stuff on Kickstarter. It's probably not going to happen just as well. We'll probably have 30 monsters out of 40 or 35 when we launch, but we want to have a better idea of how things are going to fit in, because it's a bit of a disappointment for everyone that we had to leave 2 on the cutting room floor.
So you guys are no strangers to Kickstarter, having gone through it a bunch of times. How does this one rank, do you feel? Has the Kickstarter process become rote for you now, where it's you guys have a good understanding of how it's going, or was this one more difficult or less difficult, or as far as like the Kickstarter itself?
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge because it was a bigger project than we've done before. It's like twice the, not really twice the work, but there was a lot of work on 5e. We didn't have any cred in 5e circles. No one knew us. But we had some extra help. I was lucky enough to have a free intern, summer internship programs, yay, who ended up writing some monsters that we decided to publish because they were really good. So in the end, they were paid. But it was nice to have someone who could, do the research, get in touch with YouTubers, look for all the information that we didn't have to look for because we were frantically editing and laying out stuff. So yeah, more work, but fortunately we had extra manpower.
Awesome. So if people have cool folklore stories from their home areas that they know well, that they cherish as they were growing up, send them over to the Merry Mushmen, and possibly
yes,
they may be able to be.
Ideally, we would do it the way we did it this time, meaning we had 6 or 7 people to work with, and instead of 40, because that would become a bit of a mess, and pay-wise, it might not be very interesting to just send us one monster. But yeah, if you have good ideas for monsters and you know you can write them, send me a pitch.
Awesome. So the Bestiary isn't the only new thing that you guys have going on. I noticed recently you mentioned that Merry Mushmen might be putting out a game underneath their label, the Black Sword Hack Ultimate Chaos Edition. That's got to be the greatest subtitle ever. You're no stranger to the Black Hack. You've done your own versions of it as well, your own remixes of it. What is this hack of the Black Hack? What's it all about?
So if people are curious and have a few dollars to spare, there is a first edition. That's why we had to go with our over-the-top title. And that is a game that French designer Kobayashi, who's also in the Bestiary, and was in at least 2 out of 3 knocks. That's something that he self-published, and we really like it. It's a black hack. It's a classless black hack game that's short and sweet, and that will bring you. So it's called Black Sword. So you're thinking Elric and Michael Moorcock, obviously, but also all the heroic fantasy and sword and sorcery of roughly the 60s and 70s and 80s. So think tougher than the Grey Mouser, think 3 Hearts and 3 Lions, the Broken Sword. That's something that this edition will have that the first one didn't have, some fairy powers. So people will be able to play changelings and horrible troll people. So one thing, it's classless. Second thing, the magical powers are all more Moorcockian and not nice, basically. Sorcery, demons, spirits. There is some weird technology as well, weird science. If you want to think Hawkmoon, for example. And the last thing is that the game doesn't have a setting, but it has all the tools that you may want to create your own setting where law and chaos will be at war with each other, and the final battle is looming, and your characters will have to somehow get involved. Will they actually get involved and fight for one of the sides, try and preserve balance, or will they try and hide and
survive?
Find a city of balance that might be on a different plane, and where they might actually not cease existing. But it's that kind of doomed Elric kind of vibe that we try to bring.
Right along those lines, one of the ads into the black hack that this game brought was the Doom die, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a usage die. So if you're not familiar with the black hack, they've got this concept of a usage die. It was originally intended for things like consumables. So if you had arrows, you'd start with, say, a D20. If you rolled a 1 or a 2, it would downgrade to your next smaller size die down. And when you run out of dies, you've run out of arrows. The Doom die takes that concept and makes it so bad things start to happen as you expend your Doom die, and you may use it for extra chances at things, or if you're trying to activate certain powers, what have you. I thought that was really neat. Did I kind of capture that right? Is that?
Yeah, that's it. Koba decided not to use usage dice for like petty things like arrows,
right.
Or money, like some other designers did, famously or infamously, maybe. But to use it for like important resources, including your Doom, and there's like you will almost always have a D6 for a Doom die on a one or two. When you roll it, it turns into a D4, and if you roll 1 or 2 on the D4, it's gone, and you're doomed for the rest of the day, meaning you have disadvantage everywhere. And I think we will have to add a little bit of addition there, because as a GM, I would like make sure that whoever is doomed is the random person that gets who gets abducted. Whenever you have to roll for a random player, when something happens, you don't roll, it's the Doom character.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to taking a look at that. I like the black hack from its simplicity. For me, it's been more of a game that I would reach to for a one shot rather than a longer term thing. But it's so easy to explain. I know some people bounce off the roll under mechanic, but I think it really makes it easy to explain how the game works. It's like, here's this number, roll below it, and
there isn't any math. No one needs to add numbers. Even it's easy to add numbers, and unless it's 3 a.m. and you've had 4 beers.
Yeah, exactly. Not that we've ever been in that situation. No, that would be irresponsible. We would do that. So those are 2 new things that are coming out. Before I get to what everybody knows you guys best for, is there any other new products that we should be expecting from Merry Mushroom? Are you guys expanding out into other things? Is there?
We were working on something else, and I'm gonna say it's an adventure, but that's all I'm gonna say. It's a cool beginning adventure. That's gonna be done for OSE again, because it's easy. And yeah, we have other ideas and projects. I'm also working on my own game. I have loads of ideas, but maybe I'm too ambitious because it doesn't seem to progress very fast. Yeah, that's all I can talk about at the moment.
No problem. The Merry Mushmen logo. So you guys have that the cute little logo of the 2 little mycelium mushmen guys. Which one is which? Which one is you and which one is Olivia?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. That was done by my friend Didier Balisevic, who, as far as I know, doesn't know Olivier. So,
so you get to pick. You get to choose. Yeah. Are you the wizard-looking fella or the thiefy, stabby-looking person?
I'd have to be the wizard one because I'm the one with the longer beard.
Good stuff. All right. The question I've been dying to ask you. I'm sure it's got to be right around the corner. Knock 4. When can I go and hit that advanced Kickstarter button and just wait for it to show up at my door? Because it's going to be an instant buy. When can I go and do that?
It should be beginning of next year. I don't want to say January because if I say January, it's going to happen in February. But it's looks. A lot of work has been done. A lot of work is still on my plate. Olivier is way ahead of me. And I have to get in touch with other people, and I'm still behind on reading the proposals, submissions I've had. But we are. That's something that fills every hour or half hour that we can find between other projects. So don't worry, it should be. Just make sure you have some money left after Christmas.
It's already been set aside.
Thank you.
The Knock zines, for anybody who in some way hasn't already purchased these, is a fantastic collection of blog posts or articles that gets combined all together in a beautiful art style and a nice handy physical thing that you can keep. So when the internet explodes, we still have all these awesome articles. How many contributors do you think on average you'll be doing? Like, so if you were to look at what you've done in the previous issues and what you anticipate coming up, like how many contributors do you think come in on each one of these books?
I think it's about 40 to 50. I have spreadsheets. I could tell you that. If you have a second, are you going to do any editing?
No, everybody will just listen to us. We'll just ramble while you're doing it.
Type.
So when you start gathering in these, like, do you have like a big backlog from things that were submitted in like the first 3 issues that you're trying to bring forward?
Yeah, there is stuff that's been done and signed, and there's a contract, but there wasn't room to put, or for some thematic reason, something took precedence. So yeah, it's getting easier and easier to do it because we've done it before and we have more and more material. I have 72 articles in Knock 3, and actually I can't tell you how many people. Probably 40. I'd have to count them one by one, but I'm not going to do that.
It's great for me because I can when I'm trying to think of people to reach out to for interviews on the podcast, I can almost just grab Knock and go through the contributors and be like, that's a cool person and that's a cool person, and kind of reach out to them there. And
happy to help.
How do you choose which ones go in and which ones don't? Is it more based off of how Olivier can format them and fit them in, or is it more based off of like a theme? Like on this one, we're going to do more articles about this sort of a theming. Like how does one get chosen over another, so to speak?
We don't theme anything. It was a question at the beginning, like do we want to have a theme for each book? And Olivier said no. It's his original idea, and we really wanted a bric-a-brac, which is a mess of stuff tumbling down into a book. So that doesn't happen. It's mostly down to our preference. Like if we're really enthusiastic about something, we will go in, and then sometimes for space reasons or pacing reasons, like playing a good game, you need to have your set pieces, and then you need to have your short little scenes to refresh your palette. So sometimes we're in the middle of putting something together, and we realize, we need a good long article there. Here, who were we talking to recently about something very game designy, or some huge study of some lost module, or the other way around, we have too many big pieces. Let's find some one-pagers that we can use.
The when you look at Knock, as I've said a bunch of times, it's beautifully laid out. Olivier does such a great job of, the way that he arranges text and the way the art gets merged in with the whole article. And I look at that, and you look at some other books that kind of come out in that kind of almost like an art scene with, like, Morkborg is famously talked about a lot. Gozer recently, which is like, if people aren't familiar with Gozer, it's handwritten and hand drawn, illustrated, just beautiful book. The one thing that's kind of come up out of that, though, I've heard from a few folks, is how accessible some of these books are, especially for those who use screen readers or who don't have the greatest eyesight. Is that anything that you guys have had to mess around with in terms of making sure that the products are able to be read via screen readers, or if anybody who has that issues, or thought maybe of doing like a plain text version for somebody who might need something like that?
So yeah, we never thought about doing plain text, though it wouldn't be very, very difficult, I guess. Someone will have to do it, but Olivier has always been a print layout. Like, he's been doing this job for 30 years, probably, or 25. And he doesn't really think about screen readers. So sometimes I have to remind him to add the links and make sure, like, not all our PDFs have what are they called?
Oh, the alt text, or
no, the table of contents that are clickable.
Oh, yes.
It's on the left. I have a French word in my head, which is not helping right now. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things I mentioned to you, actually, from the Bestiary PDF, is that it would really be helpful if it had a table of contents for the PDF, just for ease of clicking around rather than
that's
scrolling.
Going to be done. He's the only one who can do this, though. That was the case before I had a Windows machine again. I was on Linux for 3 years, and
very good.
I wasn't able to do any to do any Acrobat Reader editing, which I can as of like last month. So maybe I should do that myself. Poor Olivier is recovering from sending all the bestiaries over the world, which took a week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward for whenever mine arrives. It'll be a lot of fun. If you've listened to any of the other interviews I've done over the last month and a half, like I said, a lot of the people, actually, a good portion of them have appeared in Knock magazines. But one of the questions I always ask everybody near the end of the episode is, all these people, yourself included, have done interviews on a bunch of different podcasts. You guys are well known in your circles and get asked a lot of the same questions. I'm sure that I doubt very much of what I've asked is unique. But has there been things where you've gone into an interview and you've been like, I really hope somebody asks me about this? Or is there things where, if you could design the own questions coming back to you, what would you want somebody to ask you about that, people don't ask, that you'd like to make sure people knew about? What should I have asked you that I did not?
Well, I would love to tell you about my character, but I don't think that's a question you want anyone should ask me. No, seriously, I don't know. I like to talk about the state of the industry in France, because that's something that not a lot of people know about. I do think we talked about that last time.
Briefly, I think.
Yeah, maybe you asked me about my how I started playing. There's there always has been a lot of games being released in France, and it's dipped. We didn't really have a satanic panic, but we had a moral panic about games. And then it kind of survived during the 90s, and then it's exploded with crowdfunding like everywhere else. So I barely know what's happening. I still subscribe to a couple of newsletters, but every time I'm in France and I make it to a well furnished game store, which isn't everywhere, sadly, anymore. I'm always dumbfounded by the amount of creativity I find. Sadly, there wouldn't be an easy way for these games to be translated and published overseas.
Is the OSR like so in France with the current wave of indie games, what have you? Is it very much OSR, BX, TSR era D&D that people are basing things off of, or is it more a different basis that they're starting from? Like, is there for folks that are in that scene, because I'm not really familiar with it either, are people using TSR era D&D type things as their base, or are they starting from a completely different spot and exploring different ways of playing?
There isn't a lot of OSR happening in France. Let me think. Like with the translation of OSC, there has been more. But recently, I can't really think of an OSR or NSR or whatever you want to call it game that was released. It's more like indie story game kind of things. Like I'm thinking about a guy called Martin, who actually he's an English teacher, so he makes 2 versions of all of his games, or he's made that for the last 3 or 4 games. One of his games is called Meanwhile in the Subway, and your session will be about going from somewhere to somewhere on a subway, but it's a weird, surrealistic subway under some kind of weird 1920s city where you're in, and the game fits on a subway map. So you get it, it's about this size, and then you open it, and on one side you have character creation. So you're basically, it's a gigantic die drop map. And on a little, so you have them on the side of the map, but you shouldn't cut them out. You have subway tickets that are your character sheets. So you just write a couple of keywords, and on the other side is the gigantic adventure that you can create as a GM. That kind of stuff, like that, and that completely blows my mind. I have 2 versions. I ended up buying both just in case I get to run it for people.
Why do you think why do you think there isn't as many translations happening, or why do you think it takes so long for translations to take place between maybe more the games that are more popular in the English speaking lands versus going elsewhere?
So we get a lot of we get quite a bit of translation happening from English or German or Swedish or Spanish into French. That happens. But it's the other way around that doesn't happen because. And it's the same, I guess, with everything, with cinema, with literature. No one, like we have a lot of science fiction and fantasy writers, and some of them sell well, but that's not enough for an English language publisher to risk printing 5,000 books. Like you have to be like a bestseller to have a chance, and have a publisher that's really into looking for English for opportunities for your book to be translated. And I think it's the same for role-playing games. Someone who's like a game that's done well is. And of course, I'm not going to remember the name of the game. It's a dark fantasy game by Studio Agathe. Shadows of Esterin.
Okay.
That's been around for 6 or 7 years. It works. It sells well in English, but that's because the studio, the French guys, have done the whole translation process, and they translate, do the layout, do all the work they do in French, and then found a distributor or several for English language countries. But go to anyone, Wizards of the Coast, TTRPG Games, and tell them we have a great game, a great French game. They're going to say, I'm sure it's great, but look at the stuff that we have in the pipeline. It's
just more of a numbers game there, I guess, maybe, but I guess that's where a spot where smaller publishers can really step up and try to fill that gap and release some of those games in different languages. I was just speaking with Yohai Gal, creator of Karn, and he was saying that the amount of translations in different languages that he's managed to get his game into has been amazing. And if you go through the list, it's all contributors and fans of the games that have helped him translate it into all these different languages. And I think that that's the what's the word I'm looking for, the mobility or the dexterity or whatever you want to call it of the smaller size publishers and indie games and what have you are able to react like that, as opposed to somebody who is trying to put together a hardcover book that would appear at a bookstore or at a game store. The distribution is probably the bigger problem there than the actual translation itself. It's
more and more difficult, and I don't think it's going to change too much to get a role-playing game into shops, and even more difficult if you want to go into non-hobby places. So you have to have some marketing power.
You mentioned briefly earlier that with the Bestiary, you were able to take advantage of a program that's happening there in France, where if it's a cultural based item, you can get some deals on shipping and what have you. Is there? I know not all countries have these sorts of advantages, but is there things that if somebody is a small publisher or small creator, that what sort of programs like this should they be looking for? Is there, or if somebody was in France and wasn't aware of these, what sort of things should they be looking for that is some advantages that they might be able to have to do things they may not have known they could do?
In France, we have a book. There's a law about the unique price, like one price, meaning as the publisher, you decide what the price for the book is going to be, and no one can go down. There can't be any competition unless it's some kind of either a sale or or you're getting rid of your stock. So that guarantees that everyone is going to get a slice of the cake. No one is going to get squeezed. I was thinking of something else when you asked the question, and then I've lost it. I'm sure it'll get back to me. Come back to me in a second, but that's mostly that. Like, if there are plenty of like, if you're starting a business, you should look wherever you are. Go to your local enterprise center, chamber of commerce, whatever, because there's a lot of help. Sometimes it's just like 1 free hour with a lawyer. Sometimes it's here. Are you making a website here in Ireland, for example? If you're making a website that you're trading on, they will double your money. If you can prove that you've paid 2,000 euros, they will give you another 2,000 euros. And then you can have a website worth twice that money, which is great for everyone, including the web designer. All that stuff is not advertised. I guess the effort and money goes into putting those resources into place, and then there isn't as much in advertising them. So ask around, go down to your local business center, whatever, and if you work in a co-working place, which is where I am at the moment, ask questions at the coffee machine. There are plenty of, I guess, in every country, unless you're maybe in communist China, possibly. You might. I'm sure they will help you set up a business as well over there. Yeah,
it's interesting because I think a lot of indie game developers, especially coming from a more of an artistic viewpoint or just fans of the hobby and jumping into it, don't think of it as a business at the beginning. And if you don't take the time to go and find out some of those things, you might be, leaving some really great benefits to things that could have helped you out a lot. So I think that's awesome advice for, even if you're just doing a small Kickstarter where you're sending stuff out in the mail. Maybe there's a way that you can reduce some of your costs by taking advantage of these programs. So I think that's really important to throw out there is, go talk to the local Chamber of Commerce and see what can help you. So where should everybody go to find, Merry Mushmen, all the cool things that are coming out, and stay on top of announcements for things coming out afterwards?
So you could follow us on social media, but I don't know if social media will still exist when this airs. But you can find, if you look for the Merry Mushmen on Facebook and soon to be deceased Twitter, you find us. It's the letter T Mushmen. But we have a website that is actually up to date. The announcement for the Black Sword hack should have gone last week. It was going to go this week. So there'll be more detail about that. The website is themerrymushmen.com.
All right. Well, thank you very so much for coming onto the show. It's been awesome to talk with you again.
It's been a pleasure.
Hopefully, once the new secret project that is an adventure or a setting or whatever it may be,
it is an adventure.
in the future comes around, maybe we can have a chat about that one as well.
Absolutely. And you know where to find me. Well, maybe, but you have my email now, so maybe let's not rely on Twitter DMs.
But I'll definitely reach out, and everybody stay tuned for early next couple months, and smack on that Kickstarter for Knock 4 when it comes around. And if you haven't grabbed this Bestiary, it's really, really cool. I'll be doing a review for it on the podcast here in the near future as well. It's one of the I've got 2 or 3 monster books that all kind of came in at the same time, and I'm like, oh, this is great. It's early Christmas for me. So
you have to start running some games now.
Yeah, exactly. It's over the Christmas break. I've got family and stuff coming in, so I'm going to try to use this as a time to here, look at this cool thing. All right, now we're going to go play with it and go from there. But I appreciate you coming on. You and Olivier do a fantastic work. It's beautiful, visually stunning, but it's also really, really useful and helpful to everybody who plays the game. So thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for coming on and chat with me.
Pleasure again, and I'm hoping that at some point Olivier will get over his shyness, because he's not very confident about his spoken English, even if it's grand, as they say here. So maybe one day you'll be able to compliment him about his work in person.
Tell him if he would like to at some point to send me a message in French, and I will include it on there for anybody who's listening that can speak French. There is a small subset of Canadian listeners on there. Surely some of them will also understand as well if he wants to send a message as well.
All right, let's do that then.
All right, well, thank you very much. I will send this to future me to do any editing that needs to be done, and we'll go from there.
Thanks very much.
Okay, folks, that wraps up this episode of the Redcaps Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. You learned something that you were eager to come back for more. www.theredcaps.net has all the links to all the ways that you can contact me, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you very so much for listening. And remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe, have fun. We'll talk again soon. And let's play that song again.